Good morning. Welcome. This month is 2 years since we started doing the broadcasts live, YouTube, Facebook. And the last few months we did it off-site, sometimes from the car, sometimes from the office, sometimes from the house, depending what was going on in the quarantine reality and other things. But Baruch Hashem, we're back to learning live in shul. There was once a fellow who was working for a boss, and he gets his paycheck, and he looks at it, and he sees he was shortchanged. He missed like $200. So he walks over to the boss's office, and he slightly knocks on the door, and he says, I think there was a mistake here. You shortchanged me. You owe me another $200. He looks at him, and he says, nah, not really. Last pay period, I overpaid you by $200. So it's evening out. And by the way, how come he didn't complain last time? He said, listen, once in a while you make a mistake, I don't mind, but it's becoming a habit. We have a mitzvah in this week's parsha where the Torah says that you should pay your employees on time. You should not hold off from paying your worker. It's something which has to be done. It's a biblical command. If someone works for you, you have to pay him. The Ramban talks about this, and he explains that when you hire laborers, they don't usually have a lot of money, and they're counting on that pay to be able to go and buy food for their family. And when you're going to go home, he's going to go home without being paid. He's not going to have what to buy with, and he won't have what to eat, and he could die. And as a result, you're at fault because he did the work and you didn't pay him. And therefore, Torah is very strict and very specific and says, don't let the morning come without paying him, which is understood to mean you have about 12 hours to pay. After that, you are transgressing. Now, in some instances, a person does a lav, he transgresses a prohibition. The punishment is malchus. In this case, a person does not get malchus, he won't get lashes because he has to pay. He can pay and make it up, so to speak. But he's still committing a sin by not paying his worker on time. That's the pasuk from this week's parsha. Now, we have a principle that Hashem does whatever he tells us to do. He's not one of those people who goes around telling everyone how they should behave, but in their own life, they don't exactly do that. He doesn't go around and give people ideas, but then do exactly the opposite. Whatever he tells us to do, he does himself. When we make a bracha, when we say, Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysav v'tzivanu, that we are sanctifying, that we are thanking Hashem, that he sanctified us with his mitzvahs and he commanded us, whatever it is, to wash our hands, to put on film, to light candles, whatever mitzvah it may be. But we say this bracha, Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysav, with his mitzvahs. One of the reasons why it's called his mitzvahs is because they're his mitzvahs too. If he tells us to do it, he's doing it himself. And the Rambam talks about this and gives examples. Just like Hashem visits the sick, you should visit the sick. Just like Hashem helps out the poor, you should help out the poor, and so on. Because whatever Hashem is telling us to do, he does it himself. So obviously, if there is a mitzvah that you should pay your laborers, your workers, on the day that they finish their job, then Hashem does the same thing. He definitely pays his employees, pays his workers on the day they do their job. He doesn't wait till the next morning. But if you look around, there are people that do a lot of mitzvahs, and we don't necessarily see the reward coming so quickly. Right? A person keeps Shabbos, you should see the reward on Sunday morning, or even Motzei Shabbos. Right? He keeps kosher, you should see right away. And yet we don't find that there's reward so quickly. So you're expecting us to have to pay our workers right away, but you yourself are not exactly don't seem to be so careful in doing this. There's a story about the Belzer Rebbe of Aaron, who was in the hospital once. And while he was in the hospital, something happened. His door jammed, his room. They had to call a locksmith to come one afternoon and fixed it. He spent some time there. He fixed it. And then he was about to leave, and the Belzer Rebbe said, "1 second, you have to pay him. You can't let him go home without being paid." And he made a whole stink out of it. So they came, the hospital administrators came, and they said, "Listen, it's a little bit different. He's our employee, and we pay him every month or whatever. He's a maintenance guy. He's not getting paid today for doing that lock." So he said, no. It doesn't feel right, and something about this doesn't make sense. And he insisted. And they said, it doesn't work that way. He gets paid whatever every week, every 2 weeks. So he went into his own pocket and he paid him. He said, "I can't have you do work for my room and not pay you." But the general concept is, of course, it's a mitzvah. You pay the worker. Now, there are many answers that are given for this question, how Hashem doesn't pay us right away. One of the answers is that he pays us when we finish our calling, so to speak. In other words, the entire life of a person, while you're alive, you're required to work and do mitzvahs. You're serving Hashem the whole time. So until you finish, after 120 years, hopefully longer than that, you're still working. You didn't finish your job. Because you didn't finish, Hashem is not required to pay you. But after, when a person goes to Gan Eden, then he should get paid. But the Rebbe says, that's a great answer, but it only works according to the Rambam, who's of the opinion that the reward that you get is in Gan Eden. That's the main reward. But according to the Ramban, Nachman in his verse Maimonides, he says that the main reward is La'asad Lav, and Mashiach will come. This is also the view of Chassidus, of Kabbalah, that many neshamas who are now in Gan Eden did not have the full reward for everything that they've done throughout their lives. So on the one hand, we're saying that you have to pay right away. And the answer that we're giving is because we didn't finish our job. Once it's finished, then after the person passes away, they get rewarded right away. But it seems, at least according to some opinions, that the main reward is not then. And Chassidus accepts that the main reward is a Mashiach will come. So there is a reward in Gan Eden, but it's not the full reward. It's not really being compensated, so to speak, adequately for that. So the Rebbe brings another answer and explains that this is based on another exception to the rule of when you don't have to pay a person for doing their job right away. Let's stop for Kedusha. So the Rebbe tells us the other exception is if you hired someone to do a contracted work. If you brought your car into the mechanic to fix, it takes him 3 days, you don't have to go there every day and pay him for that day. You're paying him to fix your car. When it's fixed, then you'll pay him. But you hired a contractor to do some kind of work on your house, you don't pay him daily, you pay him when the project's finished. We have a collective project, and that is to make this world a better place, a world that's fit for Mashiach's coming. And once that job is completed, that's when the reward comes. So it's not that he's not fulfilling what he's telling us to do. He tells us you should pay your workers right away, but he doesn't do it. It's not that he is saying, I'm rewarding you as soon as the life is over, I'll reward you. Because not according to all opinions, do we get reward right away, even after a person passes away. What Abish is saying is this is a gradual process. It's a project from the beginning of creation until it's done, which is a Mashiach will come. And that's why the main reward, according to Chassidus, is after Mashiach comes. Because then the job is really complete. So it's Hashem, so to speak, hired us, and he said, when you're done, I'll pay you. And it's a process that goes through all the generations, right? The times of Avraham Avinu, we brought the concept of believing in Hashem to the world. That was a gradual stage where the world, up until that point, was all about idolatry and worshiping idols and not believing in one Hashem. And we changed that. We brought that change to the world. Was it completed? It wasn't completed yet, but we made a dent. Then the Yidden go out of Mitzrayim. Now there's the idea of receiving the Torah and doing mitzvahs. It's another step in making the world better. Then we have Vim and Lachim, prophets and kings. They bring prophecy to the world. They build the Beis HaMikdash, which is another level of bringing godliness and holiness into this world in a deeper way. Then you come to Tanaim and Amirayim, which is the idea of Mishnah and Gemara is brought to the world. So we're getting closer. We're not there yet, right? Then you have Gainim, Peskim, and so on, Yishainim, and so on, where you have halacha psuka. Now you have set halacha into the world, not just what we know from Mishnah and Gemara and so on. So it's a gradual process where the world is becoming better and better. That's when the Eibishter pays us. Now, although it's a good answer, and we're saying that we're not always going to see the reward right away because we didn't finish the job or the job wasn't collectively completed, but there's one caveat here. When someone comes to work for you, he's entitled to say, I need the tools, or I need the materials, or I need the money necessary to do the job. Which means you don't have to pay me for building that house today. It's going to take a year. But I do need bricks, and I need pipes, and I need employees, etc., etc. So those things you do have to pay me to allow me to do the job. I'm not going to front the expense for you. Profit, you can pay me later. And the same applies when it comes to working in a field. A person has to be able to eat while they're doing their job in the field. And various different examples of where this halacha plays out, even when it wasn't modern times. But the idea is that even though you're not getting paid for the job yet, you have to be paid to be able to do the job. And that's something which the Rebbe tells us. We turn to Hashem and we say the same thing. We say we're not asking for reward per se now. It's not the time, or if it's not the full reward yet, that's fine. But we still need the tools to be able to do the job. And the tools are to have health, to have parnasa, to have peace of mind, to have nachas, and so on, to be able to do the job correctly. Because if a person is bogged down by other things, they can't concentrate on their davening well. They can't, it's harder for them to force themselves to learn and behave appropriately and so on. It's not an excuse, but it's harder because of everything else that's going on. And this is one of the answers of how we explain we come Rosh Hashanah and Shul, and we're davening for our own needs. Here we're crowning Hashem as king, and crowning Hashem as king represents that you are nullifying yourself before him. You're committing yourself. You're totally loyal. Whatever he needs, you're going to do. And it's all about give us life and give us this, and you're asking all different personal requests. Then it goes on to Yom Kippur, and so what's this concept? If you're really all about Hashem, then why are you asking for yourself? And Chassidus tells us that it's not really for ourselves. We're telling Hashem we want to serve you better. And in order to serve you, it's much easier and better, and we could be much more productive on it and do it better if we have all of these elements that will allow us to do it. So even when we ask for our own things, it's not payment, as in this context. It's not even a selfish request. It's all in order to be able to serve Hashem, to do that collective project of making this world a better place for the Eibishter. And this, the Rebbe says, is a twofold lesson. On the one hand, we have to realize that what we do is a continuum, everything that went on till now. It's not just an individual doing one thing. And at the same time, it's a person that has the power to complete that job. As the Rambam says, we have to constantly view the world as hanging in the balance. And the next decision that I make, the next move that I do, is if it's the right thing, if it's a good thing, then you're swaying the whole scale to positive and changing the status of the whole world for good. And if Chas V'Shalom, a person does the opposite, and he makes the wrong decision, he does a bad thing, so he's swaying everything. So on the one hand, you're part of a collective contracted work that's going on since the beginning of the creation of the world. On the other hand, it's you, and it really depends just on you. Now, reward, it may not get till later, but tools that we need in order to be able to do so, we will definitely be able to do it. And this is why a Yid asks for Hashem for Gashmias, and not just that we're allowed to, but we have a requirement to, because you want to do the job well. You want to be able to do what you're supposed to. So by turning to Hashem and asking Him for Gashmias, you're not allowed, so to speak, to do that. You have to do that. The Rebbe calls it a chiyuv. It's a requirement that you have, that Hashem has to provide for us, and we have that responsibility to ask for it, to have everything that we need to do that job in the best possible way. I'm